using a product called Riverside.fm. Have heard many good things about it. So we're just fumbling our way through a new product in real time at the moment.
Yeah, and thanks to Greg for giving me about 5 minutes of time to set it all up.
I would say I gave you about 50 seconds. So.
Well, we're here. Now I'm just looking for a link to share with everyone on Twitter. We should be streaming on Twitter as well, but I'm sure I've set something up wrong. Let me just go to...
What are we up to? Episode 5 today, I think?
I believe so. I think it's probably time for us to have... Oh, sorry. Okay, I'm going to share this. We will definitely be cutting this first bit out of our podcast.
Of the normal podcast version, for sure.
I've just tweeted. I'm just having a look if we are live on Twitter as well.
I'm just having a look on YouTube and I can see us. So we're
and we've got one watching, which is me.
we're cooking with gas here.
It looks like that Twitter doesn't have the broadcast up, so we'll play around with that next time, and we'll make sure that next week you'll be able to watch us just streaming on Twitter or YouTube. But yeah, if there's anything to talk about, of course. It's been a very quiet week once again. It's over. Greg, it's over. We're done. Crypto's dead.
It hasn't been a friendly week. I don't know. I feel like in hindsight, right, there was lots of warning signs everywhere. But like many of the OGs have said many times, including yourself, it happens fast, right? It definitely happens fast. And there was a cataclysmic event. I can't even say the word at the moment this morning, but obviously with the Terra and UST fiasco.
It's terrible, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't even know what to think of it, to be honest. Like a lot of the it's such a big meltdown that it's hard to actually comprehend. Like I actually remember hearing about Terra on Modern Finance about 6 or 8 months ago, and it wasn't Kevin sort of talking about it. It was a guy who I respect a lot, Fresh Faye, on Twitter, and he was sort of saying, I'm playing around with this, but I'm a little bit uncertain. It's sort of like this algorithmic stablecoin, and you do this and you do that. It was definitely too complex for my brain to even wrap my head around it. And I sort of remember Kevin saying like, oh, sounds kind of risky, I don't know, like I might just take my 6 or 7% and just sort of saying something a little bit blah, blah, blah. But I remember I had it on my list for a long time. Look into this Terra thing. And I never did, because I just got swept up with it, with NFTs. So, but, really feeling for a lot of people. Like we're in a couple of group chats, Steve, where, seen a couple of people overnight say that they are down tremendously bad. And then, one person, I think, that was stuck overseas and sort of disconnected from all the devices and sort of probably woke up to a bit of a nightmare, really. So, yeah, it hasn't been a friendly week.
No, and I guess we can probably explain for those who don't understand what stablecoins are, for one, and what Terra and Luna were. Again, we probably should start with, did you have that spiel on our not financial advice? Because there's going to be a lot of non-financial advice coming up.
I do not have the what is it called, the printout at the moment to put it on the screen, but I'm gonna read it out. Give me 2 seconds. No, actually, I'm gonna have to pull it up somewhere else here. It's on.
Okay, I can read the last one if you like. We have an updated one.
Yeah, I've got the updated one right here. So stick with this for a little bit all over the shop. We're like the markets at the moment. We're just around everywhere. So our little show disclaimer, obviously. So the hosts discuss all topics and products. I'll just start again.
Sorry.
The hosts discuss all topics and products on the show for entertainment and educational purposes only. From time to time, the host will refer to NFTs, products, protocols, and other items by way of example, but this is not to be construed as endorsement or advice. You are responsible as a listener for doing your own research and seeking your own independent and professional legal, tax, financial, and accounting advice with respect to any investments or activities with digital assets and NFTs.
And that's all the time we have for today's show. Jesus. This is what happens when you talk to lawyers.
So with that out of the way, let's talk about Terra. You were going to break that down in as much normie speak as possible.
Yeah. So look, here's the thing. We're NFT guys. I am in crypto. So explaining this stuff, you're going to find a lot better information somewhere else. But let's talk about stablecoins. So I myself am in a USDC coin. There are a few others. I'm sure you've heard of Tether before. And of course, UST is the talk of the town at the moment. So what a stablecoin is meant to do, and there are a few different sorts, is be a one stablecoin dollar is going to be the same as one US dollar. So with USDC, which is backed by Coinbase and a few other big companies, they actually hold $1 in a bank account for every one USDC. So at any time, I can take my one USDC and convert it to one American dollar. Now, that's the smart way to do it. That's probably the safest way to do it, which still involves a lot of risk, but that's the safest way to do it. Every dollar is backed 1-to-1. Now, we're in crypto land, DeFi. We're always trying new things, seeing what can work. Tether, for a while, said that they were backed 1-to-1. Then they said they were collateralized. No one actually knows how many dollars or how much collateral Tether has. So the thought for crypto for the last few years has been Tether was the one that was going to blow up and cause what we've seen in the markets. That's still holding $1, and they've been through lots of legal cases and everything. Look, Tether could do the same thing, but let's now talk about Terra and Luna. So Terra tried to be what's known as an algorithmically backed stablecoin. So I'm trying to explain this in as little normie words as possible is very difficult. But let's go with Swan just made up a currency, which is fine. You made up two separate ones, UST and Luna. Now, one this is so difficult to explain normally. Let me see if I did take notes of how to explain it. No. So the general idea, and of course, I'm not invested in Terra or Luna. Like Greg, I heard about it, and the reason I was starting to look into it, of course, like many people, was the 20% APY. So with my USDC, I can earn between 6 and 9%, which is amazing in itself. But let me see if I can get the general idea out for Terra. You have two different coins. One's meant to be pegged to $1. Now, that's the UST coin. Luna, on the other hand, is that at any time you can buy Luna. Let's say Luna was $10 at the time. You bought that Luna. You could convert one Luna, if it was $10, for $10 of UST. And then at that time as well, you could convert back from UST to Luna. So it was meant to, if UST coin ever went under $1, you should have been able to arb it by buying Luna for, let's say, 98 cents, and then taking $1 in UST and back and forward. Now, that's a terrible explanation. We'll try to find a link to one that explains the ecosystem a bit more. But what's happened is a huge company, we don't know who, has decided to try to break this. Now, this was a known, you wouldn't call it a flaw, but a known attack vector. So you could try to depeg the UST coin and then start these cascading cells. And it looks like that's what a big company has tried to do and succeeded. So my take on this whole thing, people are there going, oh, who's going to save us? What's happening? And people have lost a lot of money. So the sympathy for those people is just massive. But we're in a space where we're trying new things all the time. So we're going to get things wrong and right. And the great thing, and also the horrible thing about crypto, is there's no one to save you here. So if we make a mistake in crypto, and we've seen it with hacks, and we've talked about it numerous times on this podcast. Just last week, the Aku had an error in their contract. So no one's going to save you when things go wrong. We have to get it right. But we're also at a stage where we're just trying things. And we tried a algorithmically backed stablecoin. We knew the flaws. That flaw got taken advantage of, and we've seen what happened. So the great thing is that there's no banks or central authorities that are going to come in and say, well, we'll just print more money and save you. So if this happened in the normal financial system, that's what would happen. The government would have some plan in place to print money and to save everyone that was affected. Here, that's not the case. If you've lost money, you've lost money. The only thing you're going to get out of it is a lesson. So what we'll do, the best thing we can do from this is learn. And of course, they've already said, we're going to have the next try. Although if people allow Luna to keep trying, I'm not so sure about that. But the next try, we're going to have it collateralized. But we've already got USDC for that. We've already got a lot of other coins. It's just a learning experience. A lot of people got massively wrecked, which is just horrible. And I think later on we can talk about the psychological thing of that and how you should play markets. I know it's probably a bit too late. It's an experiment that failed. The whole market will take learnings from it, and we will build again. And my thing is that I'm so impressed that Bitcoin has held up as well as it has. So again, we don't want to make this a Luna and Terra thing. We don't know enough about it. But they had bought a heap of Bitcoin to backstop this happening. And I think that was only like a month ago. And they've had to sell all their Bitcoin at a massive loss from what they bought it at. But now that they've sold into a market and Bitcoin's still holding, 28, 29K, I am so impressed. And you know me as a Bitcoin maximalist and recently moving into ETH with NFTs. But this is just a warning that there is only really one store of value in this space, and that's Bitcoin. And all these other coins, you've seen what happens. But everyone, make your own decision, not financial advice. So that's the worst little rundown I could possibly give, because we never prepare for anything on this show.
No, and I don't think it's our wheelhouse really either, around sort of these alts and funky sort of financial products. But how much do you think that to me it felt like the market was cooling off anyway, and then this was sort of a quote unquote black swan event that, do you think that it's dragged it down, 50% more than it would have been had Terra was just sort of plodding along normally? Or what sort of percentage do you attribute the Terra saga?
I wouldn't call it a black swan event, because we knew this could happen. And black swans aren't meant to be known. This was a known. And I saw a tweet yesterday where a guy actually called out this exact attack vector in November. And Do Kwon, look, if you follow him on Twitter, you know how he is. He's like, he just called this guy out, saying what an idiot he was and everything, but of course proven to be right. I don't know if we're in a downturn. Fair enough, it was chugging along. I think there was probably a lot of instability in the entire world market. We've seen it on the stock market, and it seems that Bitcoin's been, and the whole crypto market's been correlated to the S&P for a long time now. Things have just been going so crazy well if you held any sort of asset over the past 2 years, that we all knew something like this would eventually happen. And it's just happening now. And it seems when bad news starts, there's a lot of cascade in bad news. And I guess we can talk about when to reveal bad information and move on to Azuki, or we can also talk about, and this could have been a top signal, was my article in the Age or the Sydney Morning Herald, wherever you read your paper.
Yeah. So for those that don't know, Steve was featured on the front cover, had quite a good lengthy article about his gold board ape in general and just NFTs in general. And it certainly has been in a bit of a downward spiral, the markets. So that
it was the top. It was the top. The funny thing.
Tell us a little bit about the article for those that haven't read it. I mean, you can obviously Google or even go to Steve's Twitter. I'm sure it's still a relatively recent tweet, but sort of tell us, how did that article come about, and was it in the works for a while?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. The first time I talked to them was November of last year. So they initially wanted to start an actual NFT crypto section in their paper. And I had a chat with them in November, just told them what might work, what might not. And the original plan was that I would write maybe an article every 2 weeks to a month for them. And then they said, all right, we'll get to work on it. We'll contact you when we're ready. 6 months later, they were ready. This is like the media, the old school media these days. Everything takes a long time. And when I talked to the reporter, he was like, that's actually quite quick for us. And I had to say to him, look, so much has changed in the space. And up until that point, things were still going well. If he had interviewed me this week, completely different again. But they ended up changing. They're doing a Web3 and Me series. So they're going to try to interview a lot of people in the space. And look, we talked for probably 30, 40 minutes. And then he had to cut it down massively to fit in that page range that they do. But look, it being an interview, I think it was okay that I could get points across, and his bias wasn't there, which was good. The first blurb or whatever might have had some in there, but I think it was fine. I'm trying to sort of grow. People already know who I am, of course, but with me trying to grow NFTs, I know I have to grow my profile and get out there a bit more. So I'm trying to do that. But yeah, it was funny because now people assume I have $5 million or a $5 million asset. It could probably get 2 to 3 million at today's rate, and then of course you got tax on top of that. Again, it really doesn't matter. I was never going to sell that ape. It was just to get started in the media and get a story out there.
Yeah, well, I mean, as a reader, I thought it was quite balanced, and I think you used the analogy that you used a couple of weeks ago on the show around sort of man originally finding fire, and we're all sort of just around it at the moment and sort of burning
have we been
ourselves.
burnt?
Yes. So I think it was a really good article. It was quite funny though, obviously, to listen to or watch some of the comments in the main Twitter feed, and even I saw it pop up on LinkedIn yesterday, and sort of had a few people that are like, "Dear Lord, sell please right now." So,
they were right at the time.
Yeah, they were right. Some guy came in and said, "Why?" And then he said, "Well, it's a return of like 1,700 and I don't know." He sort of crunched the numbers. So, but should we talk about some more drama? Hopefully, we can move on to some more positive stuff towards the back end. And I'd love to get your thoughts, having ridden out the sort of crypto cycles in general towards the back half of this show. But let's talk Azuki. So, on the same day, which was Tuesday our time and Monday in the US, I think I saw Richard from Manifold tweet, it's not going to make it Mondays from now on. But that Monday in the US, Tuesday our time, this week was incredibly bad with the Terra stuff. But then obviously the Azuki news, which really sort of shocked me because I personally like I don't hold any Azukis, but I've been looking at them and I sort of I don't know, I've sort of vibed with the whole thing that they were building. I know a lot of people that have Azukis, and yeah, for it to be that drama filled of an announcement, I suppose I should give the backstory, but from what I saw is I think maybe someone was about to come out and reveal that one of the founders of Azuki was behind Funks and two other projects that essentially, I don't know whether you call them a rug or whether you just call them a failed project or whatever it might be. But I think the Funks thing in particular, because they were obviously, you know, a big part of back end 2021. They were going pretty hard at Lava Labs. They were going hard at CryptoPunk holders. I know Jimmy McNeilis was very outspoken about, you know, the stolen IP essentially. So if you don't know, Funks, they essentially flipped CryptoPunks and made them face the other way. There was no other derivative change, nothing like that. It was just sort of a straight copy, and things got pretty nasty. I mean, even though I remember the Funks founder or founders were trying to, or I should say high bag holders were trying to bring down the Bored Apes at one point and trying to create conspiracies and rubbish around that. So, you know, the Funks ecosystem and community certainly sort of fell off a cliff shortly after trying to detonate every other project. So I think for that, and then to find out that one of the Azuki co-founders was actually behind Funks, just really didn't sit well for a lot of people. And we saw huge volatility in the floor. And then I think there was a botched PR attempt on Twitter Spaces yesterday morning, Steve, or maybe 2 days ago. Give us your thoughts. How much have you looked into this, and just your general take?
Yeah, like you, I don't own Azuki, but the art's pretty cool, and I know a lot of people that do like the art. So my lens is always from a startup sort of lens at looking at things. Now, I don't think it was just this one guy. I think it's the whole team that had made these other projects, but he was the one that came out with the article. And like you said, I saw a few people saying it was the Cool Cats guys that were going to out him. And the hatred, I'm so tempted to buy Cool Cats because everyone just blames Cool Cats for everything.
I'm still sitting on something. So.
But yeah, look. So he's created 3 projects before, and if you go back and look at them, they're not, one was a rug pull because they sold them and then pulled everything, their Twitter, everything, never to be heard from again. That's what I classify as a rug pull. The other 2, they left up, they built some stuff, and they really just let it die. So the way I look at things is, and in this space, and I'm surprised that it probably does happen a lot, is you build in, you test in, and we talked about Terra before. These are all experiments. So these guys would have been like, all right, first project, let's try the simplest thing. Let's flip the punks. Okay. Oh, we've made millions of dollars. There's not much more we can do with this. And of course, they've probably gone, well, there's no real product market fit. Let's try something else. And then they look at the market and say, well, all these Wall Street people from the Reddit channel are now into NFTs. Let's create something for them. And I believe that was the Tendies thing. I don't know how that went. And then they created some other punks derivative thing. And my issue, of course, I have no problem trying to create things, building out. If it doesn't work, shutting down. That's just startup world. 95% plus end at 0. And of course, we've said it many times, the NFT market will do the exact same thing. But the difference between a startup and an NFT project is, with a startup, you are given funding at the start, and you normally sort of work until that funding's gone, or you do find product market fit. What they've done here is create the product, take all the money, and leave. So it's dodgy as, and then all they were doing was like throwing spaghetti at the wall. This one's stuck. Oh, Azuki, we've got one that people love and everything. This is what we're all in on now. So it's really dodgy. I really feel for Azuki holders. We've seen at one stage they were like, the talk was, these are going to get to 50, 100 ETH. These are the next Bored Apes. I think it got to a high of 30 ETH maybe.
Yeah, I think it even went past 30 after the
Wow.
they had the big
Well,
party
they had the
around
beans and
yeah,
everything.
the NFT LA event back in March, and there was a lot of hype. There's even a lot of hype from the ape community, right? Like obviously a lot of crossover holders, and you saw some prominent figures in the ape community that were incredibly bullish on Azuki.
Yeah, and I remember those tweets from that party. It looked absolutely epic, and the reveal and everything.
Yeah.
I think now we've got about an 80th floor. Honestly, it's a tough one. It's I can see someone taking the Funks thing and just flipping Azuki's, and we've had Ragnarok, which half flipped them. If you saw a recent NFT project that was like a 3 ETH floor before reveal, I think it's called Ragnarok. It is literally Azuki, but just forward facing. This market is just ridiculous. The prices have since collapsed, of course. But yeah, I tweeted out, why doesn't a community member just do a sort of an attack on Azuki? Fair enough, you can't take the Azuki name, but flip him, let any community members that holds an Azuki burn it for the new flipped one, move the community across, take control of your community. You can't have people like this in charge of your community. You know, what's the old saying? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, won't get fooled again. Or something like that. Whatever George Bush
Like
said.
That. Yeah.
But now they've fooled people 3 times. If you allow them to fool you a 4th time, you're the fool. You can't trust them. It's that simple. So what would likely happen is, of course, we saw that. I didn't listen to the Twitter spaces where he came, but apparently it didn't go well. That didn't go well. He's then come out with saying, sorry, I fucked up, blah, blah, blah. Twitter thread, it's not enough. Next, he'll be stepping down, which just means he's going to hide. He'll still be working on it, making all the money and everything. There's no chance this project can become what the community hopes it can with these people in charge. It's that simple. So they either, and they've made, I was looking at their secondary market, they've made $40 to $50 million already from this. The only hope is that they are smart enough to know that people will probably come after them and just hand it to the community and let the community take over. And then you've got your redemption story, and then we can see what happens if it can build up from there. But if these guys are still running it, I see it going to zero and being an afterthought.
And was there? I remember seeing a tweet or some talk about that he was pretending to be a female at some point as well. Was that?
Yeah. Well, so what I heard again, and this is all hearsay, of course. Yeah. I heard that for one of the projects, he said he was a female and it was a female-led project. Then he said, people saying that I pretend to be a female are lying. We have a female on staff. Then they got that female up on stage and she said she had only been working there for the last couple of months. So that proved to be a lie. Like, it's just, it's ridiculous. Yeah. We can't let people like this be a big part of the community. It's that simple.
Yeah. It sort of gave me a little bit of much different. I mean, Azuki were just a powerhouse, right?
They had it all.
Yeah, but I remember last year, see a lot of people actually, and I think even maybe Crypto Chicks or someone like that was a project was before World of Women, and a lot of people think that World of Women was the first sort of quote unquote female focused project. But it was actually, I remember it was a time that I was degenning a lot myself, and there was a project called Fame Lady Squad, I think it was called. And I didn't buy any at the time, but I was sort of looking at it. But then it felt like a week or two later, like they'd I wouldn't say caught fire, but they definitely got some traction.
Oh, it was growing, yeah.
And it was found out that there was 3 Russian blokes behind Fame
who
Lady
were
Squad.
doing this exact same thing of creating lots of projects.
Correct. And, I think it was World of Women that actually came out like 2-3 weeks after that sort of saga, and people were sort of looking for a legitimate project to back. So I think, a lot of it was timing there. I'm a big fan of the World of Women project, but I think they hit right at that time after the sort of Fame Lady Squad drama. But Fame Lady got to your point, Steve, that actually got eaten up by, or when I say eaten up, the ownership changed over to Becky, I think. Someone bought Becky or something like that. And she's been sort of driving that project since. I mean, I've lost track of how they're faring, but I've seen, I saw that they've had a little bit of a redemption story. And I even know people that have come into the space, recently in the last sort of 3, 4, 5 months that don't actually know the backstory of what happened with the original founders, and they're quite happy with their NFTs, which is fine. So I think there is potentially light at the end of the tunnel for Azuki, but it was such a juggernaut. It would be hard to see. It's sort of going to be stained to a degree, don't you think? But then I also think about the beanie fiasco last year with Pixel Vault and sort of Punk's comic, and it's funny how my brain has always attached Beanie to anything Pixel Vault, right? But slowly but surely, I feel like that is actually switching now, where I'm just all about, oh, look what G-Funk's doing, look what G-Funk's doing. So I suppose the message is there is light at the end of the tunnel, but it's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah, and look, Pixel Vault, I will never buy. It's a tough one. I know, I feel bad for G-Funk. He may have trusted in Beanie and all that sort of stuff, but look, like you said, if he keeps building and provides value, utility, and so on, they'll be able to resurrect, and they're still doing fine. I was just looking at Fame Lady Squad, and their floor is 0.084, so technically it's still there, still going. I'm sure it got up to crazy ETH values back in the day.
I think after the fiasco with the Russian male founders, and when it got taken over by new owners, I think it did actually hit back up towards that 0.2, 0.3 floor at some point. But obviously, giving floors right now as we sit here in a very sort of dark time in floor prices, it's probably not great context of where things have been at. But yeah.
Well, why don't we talk about dark times? I think you had a great tweet that was related, and I mentioned it last week, that was related more to the NFT grind of getting up at 2 a.m. and everything. But it was probably, like I said, one of the first tweets I saw of yours and got a follow from me. Let's talk about how you deal with markets like this, with losing copious amounts of money and everything. Personally, I'll talk about my whole sports betting journey and everything, but let's listen about how you deal with this, how you're dealing with it now, how you plan to deal with it in the future, and just, yeah.
I mean, it's funny to be in this situation because I feel like it was always coming, and I feel like, listening to people like yourself, even listening to, it's funny with DC Investor right on Twitter. Like I like DC Investor, and I feel like he had a big part in my sort of learning initially back in sort of February, March, April in 2021. But he's been doom and gloom on the Twitter feed, and he would just call it being a realist, right? And maybe he's right. So I feel like the algorithm has been showing me more and more DC Investor tweets over the last couple of months. And I remember seeing one about 2 weeks ago, or maybe even a week ago, and he was like, you've probably got several weeks, several months at the absolute most to sort of offload anything that you want to offload before we come to Goblin Town, essentially, was the sort of sentiment. And I was sort of looking at it, and I'm like, all right. And I got to say, the one thing, I'm probably going to jump around a little bit here, but the one thing that I think I've probably over-indexed too much on in my decision-making is CGT discount, right, of 50%, and not having clarity on taxes and just feeling like I'm a little bit blind in my decision-making. Now, a little bit of that is on myself because I think that April was an incredible greed month, right? Like for me, I had Moonbirds coming up. I had Gary V Friends 2, which probably wasn't as big an outlay because I sort of been working behind the scenes to have book game tokens and things like that. But it was another mint that took my bandwidth, right? And there was a lot of complexity to V Friends Series 2. And then we had the other side as well, the land launch. And, it's quite funny to think back even a week and a half ago at that land launch. The floor was ridiculous on Bored Apes. The floor on Moonbirds was, still very, very strong. It was, in hindsight, peak euphoria, right? And I probably thought there's a couple of tokens that I had that are coming up in the next pretty much 5 to 7 days that are eligible for that CGT discount. And I know that there's a lot of people, and I talk to a lot of people in Discord that say that I'm off my head for worrying about this stuff, and you play the market and you do this and you do that. And I think that that's good for me to listen to. But I suppose my counter narrative would be a lot of people are traders and flippers, and I probably am more of a holder. And to be only 5 to 7 days out as the fire and everything is capitulating around a CGT discount, right? It's been very difficult. And I keep saying to myself, like, you are too much of this goody two shoes that wants to do the right thing by like the ATO and sort of make sure that, you know, you're playing by the rules so that you don't get caught out down the track. But I suppose maybe that's just a conscious decision I've made. Now, the good thing I think for me is I'm not leveraged. I remember in 2020 when, you know, and I didn't even have a crypto investment in 2020. Well, actually at March 2020, I didn't. And I'd heard about Bitcoin a lot and Ethereum, but I just hadn't sort of stepped into the arena yet. I was on leverage I got a margin call on March 23rd, I think it was. Like I remember it was the day after Scott Morrison had made the announcement that essentially Australia was shutting down gyms and cinemas and And I got a call saying, hey, you got to stump up 20 grand in the next 24 hours, or, you know, we start to liquidate some of your portfolio. This is
in stocks.
Yeah,
okay.
In stocks.
Yeah.
I should mention that. And, you know, in hindsight, like 20 grand right now feels like nothing, right? With some of the stuff we've been throwing around in NFTs and crypto. But that was a big moment for me. Like that was a moment where I kept having this doomsday thought of like, but what if it goes down again the next day, and then I got to stump up another 20 grand the next day? And I worked it out that really, like, I could probably only stump it up 3 more times. And I'm like, what if it happens a 4th time? Essentially, I've just wiped out 80 grand and I'm still selling at a low price. But luckily for me, it didn't happen like that. Like I stumped up the 20 grand. So I did sort of quote unquote, put the nuts on the table a little bit. And I thought, all right, I'll ride this out. But it was a great learning experience for me where I didn't really want to touch leverage again after that, because I thought I was too emotionally attached and it was all I could think about in my life, right? Like I would do a workout and I'd still be thinking about what's the market doing right now? What's the market doing? And I didn't feel in control being on leverage, right? Like I felt like sometimes you feel out of control anyway, but being on leverage like almost puts that on steroids, that feeling of being out of control on steroids. So since that moment, I've sort of like, will I touch leverage again in my life? Maybe, but if it was, it would be a very, very small amount. And that taught me a real great lesson around sort of trading on leverage, even though in hindsight was a small amount of money for what, you know, has come my way probably in the last 12 months, although a lot of that's been sort of wiped out in the last sort of 7 to 10 days. But, you know, I positioned myself a few weeks ago a little bit. You spoke about USDC off the top, Steve, and I sort of put a little bit into USDC. I've been a couple of the sales that I have had over the last financial year. I've put, you know, 30-40% aside for tax, and then I put a little bit more sort of what I would call runway funds, you know, into USDC as well. So I don't feel great about the situation at the moment. Like I feel like I've left a lot on the table, but at the same time, I'm not at panic stations. I feel like I did a few clever moves the last couple of weeks that made me sleep better a little bit and not be as exposed to NFTs. And I think for me now, like I look at some of the tokens I hold and I go, well, I've actually got good tokens, right? So, well, some of them I've got good ones, right? So, you know, do I sell now and just sort of capitulate and that's fine and I'd still be up? But there's a part of me that goes, you know, we have seen this before, like whether it's 2020 with my traditional stock investments, or whether it's even, I can remember minting, it's nearly 12 months to the day that I minted my first Ethereum NFT being a VFriend, right? I think it's actually tonight, the anniversary is tonight or something like that. And I remember Gary V's VFriends or Ethereum was at 5,500 Australian at mint, right? And I had already had one Ethereum that I'd purchased, from 2020 when it was only $520. So I have seen the days where Ethereum was only $520, but I was nowhere
We might
near
see him again.
Well, I hope not, but yeah, maybe. So, I remember shortly after VFriends, Ethereum went down to like 2,500 Australian, right? So it had this massive dip. Now, this probably feels a little bit different because, the macro sort of outlook seems a bit more bleak. But what I suppose we have seen in crypto, right, is like it can bounce back almost as quick as it sort of capitulates to a degree. Now, I'm sure that there's plenty of people, including yourself, out there going, yeah, you could be in for a rough sort of couple of months, couple of years, because this could extend, and maybe it does. But I'm rambling on a bit, but I would say that I'm not the key takeaways for me are I probably have had tax in the back of my mind, or a lack of tax clarity clouding my judgment at times. Like, I've just got to get to the finish line of this, or I've just got to get to the anniversary date of that. So that's a takeaway for me that I probably need to sort of self-reflect on. I think I have positioned myself maybe like 4 or 5 out of 10 in hindsight. Like, I think, but hindsight's a wonderful thing, right? And then the third one is I think I have higher conviction than what I thought I would have on NFTs and crypto in general. Having ridden this wave for 12 to sort of 15 months now, and I don't want to go anywhere either. That's probably the last thing I'll finish on.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You've pretty much gone full time into Web3 as of the start of this year, right?
Yes, yeah, I have, and I'm still sort of figuring it out. Like, I've opened up my own consultancy shop, and that work is somewhat sporadic at the moment. And to be fair to some of my clients, it's been sporadic because of my own collecting priorities as well. Like, at times especially in this last month, Steve, I haven't really doubled down on the client stuff because there's just been so much opportunity with minting, and to be, it feels like that opportunity has just been rug pulled, over the last 10 days. But, it's something that it's a space that I would like to at least explore for the next, 6 to 18 months at minimum, if I can, financially, because I think I got a lot to offer this space, and I've been formulating a lot of thoughts and just being a sponge over the last 12 to 15 months, as well as kicking the tires of a lot of projects. And I've had some good wins. I've had some bad decisions as well. And it's sort of like all battle scars, right? I feel like, every OG you see in the space that I follow, and, yourself included, like, you need some battle scars, right? Like, it can't just be up only. You have to go through the shit as well as the good times. So as much as the shit doesn't feel good, sort of in a way, I think I'm ready for it. So
exactly. Look, this is where you learn all your lessons. Everyone loves volatility when it's to the upside, and just it cries when it does the opposite side of that volatility. So like you, I'm a terrible seller. I was thinking about tax the entire time. I haven't sold anything.
We are like the ATO poster boys. If you're out there, ATO, like we could be like
honestly,
paid influencers for you.
Exactly. I've been waiting for my 1 year thing, but then I still, like, the Bored Apes had just reached over a year before on the land sale, and I was just holding. I'm terrible with that sort of stuff, but I also know it's sort of my superpower of just being able to hold. I can hold through anything. I will hold through anything. I see this. If Bored Apes are going to work, in 10 years, they're going to be much higher than they are now, no matter what. So I'm more than happy to just wait and deal with it in the future. So these sort of things, and I was talking to my cousin this morning. I told him I must be a psychopath because I enjoy dips. I love this type of market. There's a lot where I'm so invested now that I'm not going to really put in any more money. But as you mentioned about margin, in this entire experience of being crypto for, I don't know how long, it's coming up 9-10 years, this is how much margin or anything I've ever had, zero. I've never used any sort of leverage. I've only ever put money in that I was willing to lose. So on that, if at the moment you're feeling like shit, scared, anything, it's simple. You've put too much money in. And it's an error we all make. These are all great lessons. There's, I guess, one of the scariest parts are the people that have lost what was all their money. And that's the really sad thing. But money is, well, I know it's hard to say, but money's not the most important thing in the world. You can always make it back. It's just going to take time, a lot of work and effort. But yeah, if you've lost all your money, talk to people. It's not as important as it seems. And if you can, you will get past it. And there'll be another stage and you will learn so much from that. But I've now, luckily, got all those battle scars of the past 9-10 years. But more so than the whole crypto market was my sports betting battle scar. So I think it was 10 years ago, maybe 11 now. I started a blog. And so I had come off this 10-year period of always having money. There was these online casinos where I made so much money but spent so much money. So I hit 30 and I was like, geez, there's no more money coming in. What do I do now? I had a couple of $100,000 in saving. So I think it was like 200,000. I said, look, I'm still young. I've got 10 years. I want to be able to be financially independent. And I just started throwing, like we said before, spaghetti at the wall. I tried startups. I tried investing, stocks, crypto, sports betting, blogging, just all these things all at once. And I wanted to see what would work, what wouldn't. And I thought, well, I'm single. I've got all this energy. I've got a little bit of runway. I can try all this stuff. Worst case, and this is the truth. The worst case was I go and get a corporate job. That was my worst case scenario. So we're very lucky that in Australia and in most of the developed world, your worst case is go get a job. So tried all this stuff.
So I'm going to put two things to you, and I think I'm going to give Zeneca a bit of a plug in a second for an episode I listened to recently. But I do think, and even if I'm assessing my own behavior, right, like you talk about the corporate job as the worst case scenario, I actually think that, and Gary Vee talks about this a lot too, is it's not actually the thought of getting a corporate job, because that's fine as well, right? Like I've worked a corporate job for 14 years of my life and had for most of it the time of my life. And there's pros and cons to anything, or trade-offs as we sort of call in crypto. But I honestly think it's that fear of failure, or the fear of telling others, almost like you failed in this startup world, or you failed making it on your own, so you're sort of walking back with your tail between your legs. And if you can have something in your brain that clicks that you don't really care, or often like what is it called, the spotlight effect or something like that from a psychology term, where you think
no one gives a shit about you.
Exactly. You think everyone in the world is looking at you, but no one actually is, right?
No, they're all worried about themselves.
Correct. And I think that is actually a big thing. And I even in my own sort of selling or lack of selling, Steve, I've had a few conversations with different people, and I respect them immensely. But I sort of, you have to, I almost walk away from it and go, well, this is the decision I want to make. But it's almost like, I feel like if it in hindsight, if it's the wrong decision, it's not actually the financial hit that I take that's messing with my psychology. It's almost like, oh, that person gave me the advice and I didn't take it, so now they think like, I'm almost worried about their judgment, which is interesting in a psychology sense. And the one thing I wanted to shout out, and maybe we can even get Zeneca on a future show. So Zeneca was a speaker at NFT Fest, and he's an Aussie for those that don't know. But I listened to this fantastic podcast that was shared by a friend of mine the other day, and it was from April 26th on Zen Chats with Zeneca. So if you just plug that into your podcast player, Zen Chats with Zeneca, and it's titled "How to Maintain Your Mental Health in the NFT Space" with Jared Tendler. So Jared was poker coach of Zeneca, but also, a few of my previous worlds colliding, was an aspiring professional golfer, had some real bad mental health battles, or I suppose mental battles on the golf course, trying to qualify for the US Open, and decided to be sort of a quote unquote, mental game coach. But it was honestly one of the best just podcasts in general, like not even if you're into NFTs, but just understanding your own psyche in high pressure situations, which I'm sure you've been in multiple times, Steve, with your sports betting and things like that, but highly recommend it. It's from April 26th. So maybe we can get Zeneca actually on to talk a little bit more about that in the coming weeks.
Yeah, and Jared has a couple of books that are really good on all of this sort of stuff, how to deal with losses, how to make the right decisions at the right time. But yeah, and I think Zeneca used to be a poker pro player, is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of us that used to either do poker, sports betting, that have moved across to the NFT space because it's very similar, making EV decisions and so on. And one of the things that I mentioned to a few people in our private Aussie Apes chat was that one of the reasons I moved is, well, at least if I make money here, I don't get stopped. So in Australia, if you make money sports betting, the bookmakers actually will limit your account. So I was hamstrung for most of my betting life from how much I could make. But in the NFT space, if you're good, you can make as much profit as is possible. But yeah, moving along to the sports betting. So that one, I had the blog. I was doing a lot of sports betting. As is always the case, I was lucky enough to start well. So I think at the time, my profit had gone to $300,000 in maybe three years or something like that while doing everything else. Then, of course, there's always volatility, especially in sports betting. And I went from 300 down to 150,000 in the space of a few months. And yeah, that taught me a lot about how I can deal with loss. Of course, I took the time to work out what I was doing right and wrong, the psychology behind it, and I changed a few things up. I saw that so I was following a lot of tipsters, which are these pretty much an influencer in the NFT space. And I saw that 99% of these tipsters had no idea what they were talking about and were losing me money by following them. So I cut all the bad ones, kept the good one, and then over the next few years regained that, and then of course went up again. And of course being in all those crypto crashes, 2013, 17, and I'm assuming now, and sorry to say, but I think we're still early in this crash. So I think we see one more big drop. I am probably wrong, so never take my advice. I see one big capitulation. I won't even give price targets, but I think we've still got one to go. Then months of sideways action before some sort of catalyst starts us back again. But again, it's very dependent on so many other factors in the world. But yeah, so luckily for me, and reading all these books, so all these books behind, probably 20% are psychology type things. And I've said this before on other podcasts. Look, I've got a book really close, and I didn't even mean this, but Stoic philosophy has always been something that I come back to. So once you realize that, and this goes back to ego as well, like you were saying with jobs and everything, I would suggest getting not only meditations. So the two books, if you've got money to spend, and these are like $10, get this or get it free because it's probably in the public domain. So meditations.
Tell us the title for those that are just listening to the audio version at the moment.
Yep. So it's Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, who was an emperor of Rome back in the day. And the other ones, probably my favorite book of all time, is Letters from a Stoic. I think it's by Seneca. Just read them during this period. It will be worth more than any sort of course or anything you can do. Just read those books, look into Stoic philosophy. But in a nutshell, it's like, we're all going to die. What's the big deal? Think of the worst thing that can happen.
This has got to be our best episode yet. We're talking about Stoic philosophy and that we're all going to die. And geez, we're really
honestly, nothing in life is all that important. You've got to think family, friends, relationships. You got the key there. everything else is a bit of fun and everything. But look, I'm doing a disservice to Stoic philosophy there. Get those books, read them. I think it will help you immensely if you're worried about this current stage in the market. But yeah, so I've been lucky enough that I've been through this many, many times, and have certain things. I haven't in a long time meditated, which is another massive thing to do. Get in the right sleep, of course. You mentioned all these things in your tweet thread.
Yeah.
And just really general stuff. Get outside, spend time with the family. I'm hoping this lasts for a lot longer so I can slow down a bit. I have been nonstop on NFTs for the last 6-8 months. So I'm happy that I might be able to go off the break just that tiny little bit over the next few months. I'm still here 18 hours a day sitting here doing work, but I might be able to take an hour off now. So
yeah. And I think two things I wanted to add before we maybe get onto another topic to wrap up. But it's a funny statement for me to say for you that have had the $5 million Bored Ape in the paper last year, and I know that your attitude to money, which you've just sort of talked about, is you're quite open to talk about it. You've made obviously NFTs videos around it, and I think that's really good, and it fits your personality, it fits your bill, and just as much you can deal with talking about the upside, you're also happy to deal with the downside, right? It's not going to affect you too much.
I completely I'm completely prepared for this to go to zero.
Yep. So I think for me, and I subconsciously made a decision to a degree last year when stuff was going up. Of course, did it sweep me up at times? Yes, it did. But I very, very rarely, and maybe someone can find a tweet here and there, I don't know, but I'm not outwardly open around like, oh, this token that I've got went to this number or went to that number. And I actually think that's important for times like this, because you see a lot of Twitter accounts that say, hey, I just got airdrop this and it's worth, 80 grand or 50 grand or 20 grand or whatever. And now it could be worth bugger all, and they haven't cashed out, similar to you and I. And that's a harder pill to swallow, I think, particularly if you're pretty brazen around, look at this portfolio and you attach that to your identity. I think it hits you harder in these times. So I am glad that I haven't gone out too hard with like, look at me stuff, because it can blow back the other way.
Yeah, the other issue is, and this is why you can never take financial advice from anyone, is we're all in different stages of life. So if you're 20 and your account blows up, big deal. Go get a job at Macca's and start it up again. You've got so many years to find that right one, learn about the space and everything. I'm a bit older. I should not be taking as large a risk as I do. And I said in the article that I'm a net seller this year. If only I had started net selling at that stage.
Shout out to our friends at the ATO again.
Yeah, exactly. But this is the thing. We're all in different stages. Some, like I said, I got lucky on a few things, and if this all goes to zero, I've only put in money that I could afford to lose. If I did sell, I wouldn't know what to do with the money anyway. I have a very minimalistic life. I live, again, I think I've mentioned this before, out of all my friends, I live in the smallest house. I'm more than happy. My family's more than happy with the little that we have. It's enough to live on, and it gives us the freedom not to have worries. And this is, to me, fun stuff. This is what I find interesting. I see the future here. It keeps me going. So yeah, we're all in different stages. So make decisions based on your age, how much money you have, what your goals are, how committed you are to this space. And that's for any type of investing as well.
Yeah, I think it's good advice, and that minimalistic lifestyle. I think I texted you earlier this week to say, one thing that I did notice about myself this year, where I had sort of on paper made a lot more than any other previous years. Now, a lot of that sort of
again, shout out ATO.
Maybe not as high as it once was. At the peak of sort of Moonbirds, where I was looking around going, "Are we living in a simulation right now?" But I've told
so many people. I assume I've been hit by a car and I'm in a coma and I'm making all this up, because that's how crazy the prices got.
Yeah, they did. And but I think for me, what actually, in your point around getting back to a little bit of quote unquote normality, like whether that's time with your family or a bit more fitness stuff, like for me, I haven't seen any lifestyle creep for myself like over the last 12 months, which has been interesting, right? Because you can always say that if you say, well, if I come into blah, 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 I'm going to want to eat at a nicer restaurant, I want to do this, I want to do that. I would say I've actually gone the other way. I've sort of never go clothes shopping. Like it's almost like
well, this is the only.
I wouldn't call myself a tight ass, but I would also say like, the thing that probably brings me the most pleasure, which is earned, and it's the only way you can earn it, is like really a hard workout, and that first 5 to 10 minutes after a hard workout, and the self-satisfaction of knowing that you like pushed yourself. And for me, that's like almost the best mental state I can get into is those 5 or 10 minutes after a hard workout. So I'm actually looking forward to doing a little bit more of that, because some of that has fallen off the waist, the cliff a little bit over the last sort of couple of months in the frenzy that we've been involved with.
Yeah, and look, for me, this gives me time to build without people saying when moon and so on. And like you, it will give me a chance. And I have slowly been getting back in the gym, get me a bit fitter. If you look at videos from when I started NFTs to now, this little face, a little bit chubbier. So there is a lot of fitness to come, and just, and I just love these markets, because I can now build in peace. No one's expecting NFTs or any NFTs to go to the moon now. They're all worried and thinking they're going to go to zero. So now I get to build, I get to release. Hopefully we time the players nice when there is a rebound. And I'm just loving this opportunity to build in this space without everything else. But again, we're 1 week or a few days into a crash. It could recover tomorrow. There could be a catalyst. Bored Apes could actually tweet anything. Who knows? I think the Bored Ape coin is down to like $5.50 US. But you just don't know. I still don't think we're anywhere near a floor, like I mentioned. But tomorrow is a new day. Things could just as likely take off. We just wait and see. We just play the cards as they're dealt. And have fun. Enjoy life.
Yeah, agreed. And as Satoshi NFT, founder of MF, always says, according to the experts, the markets could go up or they could go down tomorrow. I love that tweet.
He doesn't mention that they could stay flat.
So before we wrap up, I wanted to give up actually just a couple of headlines and shout outs. So as I mentioned earlier, VFriends actually marks their 1 year anniversary today since launch. I remember getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning and having MetaMask pop up with a 29,000 USD gas.
I remember that.
So I went back to bed. I didn't really know what to do. I was in the Discord at 3 o'clock in the morning. Gary's like, "Don't mint, there's a bug," or "There's this or that." And I'm like, all right, well, there goes like, the thing that I wanted to buy. And, I ended up buying my first one the next day at sort of 11 a.m. I actually ended up buying a slightly more rare token because they'd hit the floor by then. So that was all a learning experience. I literally can't believe that's only 12 months ago. Like it feels like 12 years ago.
It is crazy.
So right now, as we speak, 12 months ago, I did not own one Ethereum NFT.
Well, congratulations on popping that cherry a year ago. Wow. But honestly, crazy, right? I'm sure it's felt like 10 years. I know it was, it was just before Bored Apes for me. So it's only been a year. Sorry. December was the first NFT technically on Nifty Gateway, but you didn't actually hold an NFT. But like you, it's only been a year and a bit, and it has felt like a lifetime. It's crazy. I do remember that contract having that issue, and then seen the gift goats at 5 ETH. And like you said before, at the time, ETH was about 5,000 Australian dollars. And I was like, 25K. I knew Gary would give enough value back, but I just couldn't pull the trigger at that stage. I only held the apes and a few other, and Super Yetis at the time. And I just couldn't do it. And that was like, oh, damn. And I think last week he came out with the gift goat of the bottle of, was it Johnny Walker or whatever? I think there's only 555 of those, of course. I can't imagine the price that they're going to resell for in the future. But we did talk about VFriends Series 2 on our first ever episode. And we made some predictions. Do you remember yours of what they would be in a month?
Yeah, I think you're going to be right on the money, to be honest.
I think I got lucky with the market.
Yeah, I said 1.25 to 1.5, and the floor's currently at 0.62.
Oh, you're looking now.
Yeah, I would, and I think you actually said 0.5 to 0.75.
To 0.7. Yeah.
So
I look like a genius right now.
You look like a genius, but I'm going to say that the market is drastically helping you right now.
Well, I would also say we both said Moonbirds would be 6 to 8 ETH. So at least I'm 50% now. And that's just another reason never to take our advice on anything.
No, definitely not. The other couple of things were Instagram, I believe, next week's rolling out a beta version of essentially what Twitter Blue has done, right? Like over the last sort of 4 to 6 months of.
But I believe you can mint NFTs from them as well.
Well, I actually didn't see that, so that there's something else on top of it. As far as I'm aware, it's more of the minting might be an aspect too, but more of displaying your NFTs, which is going to be an interesting thing on Instagram, right? Like I even go onto my personal Instagram and I'm getting tagged in these bunch of scams and rot, and I don't even post about NFTs on my Instagram, so it's going to be interesting to see how regular Instagram users react to that. But I think overall it's a net positive, right? Anything that is as large a platform as Instagram that is giving credence to NFTs has got to be a good thing for the space overall.
Well, the question there is, we all assumed we can talk about Coinbase NFT, which is now open to everybody. Everyone assumed that this marketplace that Coinbase was working on was going to be the savior and pump all our bags, and we could sell to all the normies that still have crypto on Coinbase. I believe they did 20 ETH in volume last week or on one particular day. It seems no one at all is using this platform. So the question is there product market fit with Instagram and NFTs? I would say it's much more likely. Instagram is a image-based product. I'm over 40, so I haven't logged in years to Instagram. And my own perception of Instagram is that's where all NFT scams are done, because you always see like those sort of scam promoted ones that go to zero on there. But it'll be an interesting one. I can see influencers, models, so on, minting their pictures and allowing someone to own it while everyone can look at it. So then on the picture, you will then say, this account owns this one, and so on. So that'll be an interesting way. I'm sure Meta will take their large cut. Hopefully it's not the 47.5% they were going to take from their Meta land. But yeah, like you said, any time we get NFTs into mass market, it can only be a good thing. We just keep going, and the next big project will then incorporate NFTs. Apple, Google, it's all coming. It's just we repeat this every time, still so early in this space. The fact that we're all about PFP pictures at the moment, it's not going to, when we're talking in a year, we'll be talking about so many different things. It's just great to see each little brick being built on top of each other, all these lessons being learnt, and NFTs and crypto just keeps going. And it will be very interesting. Maybe on the next show, we can give some predictions of where we think we'll be in a year.
That would be fascinating.
We will be so wrong, by the way.
Yeah, of course, but it'll be fun to speculate. Two last things before we wrap up. Kingship, which is Jimmy McNeilis or Jimmy.eth for those that follow Jimmy on Twitter, from Nameless. The Kingship, which I describe as the Gorillaz music group from the mid-2000s, but reincarnated as a Bored Ape and Mutant Ape metaverse group, if you like. So the Kingship are minting some tokens. I think that's a drop of roughly 5,000. If you're a Bored Ape, Mutant Ape holder, Sup Ducks, World of Women, Avastars, and I'm missing a couple here, you have the ability to go into a pre-mint raffle for spots. I think it's a 0.19 ETH mint. I know most people are probably pumping the brakes on new mints at the moment. I will be at least minting one if I get a raffle spot. I'm very, very interested in music NFTs. I'd love to talk about those in the back half of the year, Steve, when I start going down the rabbit hole a little bit more. But I think that one in particular is going to be an interesting project. They've signed with a traditional talent agent in the US. So the Kingship, I would probably go to Jimmy.eth's Twitter page. That's probably where you're going to get the most information. But if you are a holder of one of those projects I listed, you could potentially get an allow list spot there. The other mint that's happening this weekend, or at least significant mint that I know has come across my sort of, or at least been on my radar, is Chris Cantino and Jamie Schmidt. Jamie Schmidt being one of the co-founders of BFF. They are launching crypto consumer goods, I think they call it. No, crypto packaged goods. It's CPG and their POP token. So it's a 2,700 drop, but it's a very high mint price. It's 3 ETH on the public and 2.5.
I'm over these sort of mints, yes, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a very high mint. I entered the raffle I saw last night. I did not get a spot. I only got a waitlist spot, but I got to be honest, I think maybe it's a saving grace because everything says to myself right now, I want to avoid high mints in this market. Having said that, I think Chris is a real operator and builder. So I'm going to be interested to see how they build out that token. But if I had to give the TLDR on it, I think it's sort of like a proof type of community that he's trying to build. They do have a proven track record, Chris and Jamie, but in the current market, it's definitely a high mint price. So good luck to those that are going down the pop route. I think that you will get a lot of value out of it. Obviously not financial advice, but it's going to be interesting to see how the secondary market for that reacts after the mint on Sunday morning, our time, Australian.
Yeah, and just on music NFTs, it will be an interesting topic, and we'll try to get someone on. I have brought an Ape in Productions NFT, which was another band. Yeah. So I've got a couple of those tokens. I hadn't heard of Jimmy's. I knew the band, that they had set up the band with there was one gold ape and a few others. And of course, loved the Gorillaz back in the day. So yeah, I'll have a look into that. And if I snag a spot, I might grab one.
Make sure if you're listening, and for you, Steve, do it in the next few hours, because I think Jimmy tweeted out yesterday that there was a 48-hour window. So I would say you've probably got till tonight. You've probably still got at least 8 to 12 hours up your sleeve. So we're talking right now on Wednesday, the 12th of May at 11:30 a.m. So if you're listening to this in the podcast version, you might have missed out, but keep an eye out to the Kingship.
Yeah, and now, where are you next week? Are you going to be in the States?
Yeah, that's a great question. I will be. Yes, I will be most likely in Minneapolis on the cusp of VCon starting. So, I'm happy to try to do the show throughout the time that I'm going to be in the US. Hopefully, we maybe can get a guest or two throughout. But I think we might just need to make sure that the show's morning because, probably need to catch me sort of in that between where the conference days maybe have finished or on the non-conference days will work as well. Yeah,
we'll sort it out. Okay, excellent. Anything else to add before we sign off for this eventful week?
Eventful week. Just keep your wits about you, people. And like Steve said earlier, reach out, have a conversation. I've had a couple of good conversations myself in the last week, and they do help.
100%. All right, stay safe out there in crypto land. We will be back next week. See you.